Welcome to another episode of the Growth Focus podcast, where we bring together tech leaders from all across the globe to share their time, their insights, and their expertise with us to help you grow your business. My name is Gary Lafferty, your host and founder of the Growth Focus Partnerships, where we take experts within the field and elevate them to being the authority, the sought after one, by making sure they have authority-led marketing that elevates them over and above their competition. Now, on this episode, I can't wait to get into because we're going to be talking about startups. We're going to talk about standing out. We're going to be talking about the challenges of running a business, but still running it your own way. So make sure you've got a pen and paper or whatever notes you want to take down, because this is going to be an absolutely enjoyable podcast episode. So without further ado, Donato, it's an absolute pleasure to have you with us today on this episode. Why don't you start off the episode by telling us a little about who you are and what is it that you do?
Yeah, thank you so much, Gary, for having me on here. Very excited to speak with you today. So my name is Donata. I'm an attorney licensed in Illinois and a certified information privacy professional. I'm also the president and legal engineer of Termageddon. And at the American Bar Association, I'm the chair of the e-privacy committee, member of the cybersecurity legal task force, member of the Science and Technology Council, and I'm also the ABA representative to the United Nations too.
Wow, you really do keep busy, don't you? No, it's not just one thing. You've just got a whole heap of things on your plate. Well, we're going to dissect some of those today, but let's start off with, for those people who do not know what Termageddon actually does, why don't you explain a little bit about the problem you solve and who do you solve it for?
Sure. So we're a website policies generator. A lot of businesses, including small businesses and nonprofits and solopreneurs and large businesses as well, when they have websites, they collect personal information like names, emails, phone numbers, and they're required to have a privacy policy by a variety of different privacy laws. And those laws update very frequently. There's always new laws passed, new rules, guidance, regulations. So they need to keep those policies up to date as well. So what we do is we help them generate their website policies, and then we also keep them up to date for them with changing legislation and changing requirements.
Oh, wow. Okay. And who do you actually, when it comes down to a specific marketplace, is there somebody in a particular niche or an industry that you tend to go for? Or do you actually have quite a broad horizontal market that you can actually aim at?
So it's really interesting because we get registration emails every day, and every once in a while I check the domains of people who registered, and it's anywhere from a sole person health coaching business to an airline. So we have a very, very broad range of clients. Most of our clients are small business clients, but we also have quite a few large business clients too. So in terms of who we actually try to target with our service, it's really businesses, but we work primarily with website designers and marketers, so web agencies who recommend our service to their clients. And we also have a lot of law firm partners who use our service to generate policies for their clients as well.
So I want to talk about that because I know when you and I have talked about this before, it's one of those things where anybody who's listening to this will know the word reiterate. We aim to go down one particular route, and then through one thing or another, we end up going, well, that wasn't what we expected. Why don't you share that story with us?
Sure. So the agency partner program, we did kind of expect that because before this, my husband owned a web agency. So he was having his clients ask him, he built the website and his clients would ask, what do I do for my website policies? And he would have no answer. So that's why we created the web agency partner program. So that part was kind of planned, but we never expected law firms to want to use our service. So initially, I started this as an attorney because I was really tired of writing privacy policies and terms for my clients. I thought it was very boring, very repetitive. So I wanted to automate that process. But I really thought that I was the only lawyer with that problem. And I'm not sure why I thought that. And I also thought that lawyers would see us as competition or maybe want to kind of say how our service is not good so that they could bill their clients for it. But what we found is that when we first started, we had law firms reaching out to us saying, hey, I'm really sick of writing privacy policies for my clients. Can I become like a partner too? And we're like, okay, that's weird, but sure. And eventually just turned into a whole law firm partnership program. And what lawyers do is they use Termageddon to take off that repetitive, boring part of creating policies. And then they're able to still bill their clients for for, reviewing the policy or for advising them as to how to comply with privacy laws in other ways, like how to respond to privacy rights requests or how to do a data map and things like that. So we really thought that lawyers weren't going to like us, and it turned out quite the opposite, which was a big surprise.
Yeah, I love that. I love it when surprises come around the corner and you think, when we really think they're definitely not going to be interested, and
Yeah.
they end up being a great advocate. Isn't this crazy thing? So, talking about doing what you do, was there a specific moment, or maybe it's a client story that you could share with us when you suddenly realized that's it, the penny's dropped. This is actually working. We've got product market fit. Was there a particular time that happened that you can recall?
Yes. So for us, it was GDPR. So when we initially started the company, Hans and I, my husband, we were dating at the time and we were talking about our issues with this. I thought writing these things is boring and repetitive. He didn't know what to recommend to his clients. And we decided to start this business. And it took a while to build the policy generator technology. And we really thought initially that this was going to be like a part time business. We didn't necessarily think that there were going to be so many privacy laws and so many changes because at the time that wasn't a thing. And we worked in different jobs. He worked at an agency. I was in private practice. And then I worked for junk mail company, which is extremely embarrassing being a privacy lawyer now. But it was kind of a back burner project. We're like, okay, we're going to build this and we're just going to let it run and just see what happens. And then GDPR went into effect. For those of you who don't know, this is EU's comprehensive privacy law. And we started seeing more and more registrations. And we started seeing more and more emails from people saying, oh, do you guys cover GDPR? Because it was just so hot at that time. And I mean, it's still kind of as hot right now, but people were freaking out about it. They knew they had to comply with it. They had no idea how. They knew they needed policies. And we started gaining more and more interest. We got more registrations, more people signing up for our list, more people submitting requests and things like that. And that's when we're like, oh, wow, this is interesting. Like there's this huge law. Everybody's very interested about it. Maybe this shouldn't be like a part time job anymore. Maybe we should go full time. And my husband sold his web design agency and he went full time. And then a couple months later, I quit my job and went full time as well. And that's kind of what really, so it wasn't necessarily something that we specifically did. It was just a complete change in the market.
Yeah, that's really found. As I said, it's always interesting to hear how people got started. From sometimes it's the seedling and the seedling grows, and sometimes it's out of circumstance, and
Mhm.
sometimes it's just the law changed and an
Yeah.
opportunity came. So let's talk about going right again. Whilst we're still, in your past history, before you had the traction, there'll be people listening here, who are trying to recall back to when they first started getting their first clients and their first paying customers. So before you had the traction, before you had the brand, as you said, and the team, and you knew this was going to be, how did you go about starting to win your first paying clients?
So we actually got really lucky with that too. So my husband knew that we had to target web design agencies through the program, and then they would resell or refer clients to us. And we were looking for agency groups on Facebook. And we just so happened to stumble on the admin bar, which is a Facebook group. I don't run the group, so I'm not like promoting anything here, but it was just a brand new group for web agencies that was just getting started. And we reached out to the admins of the group and we said, hey, this looks really interesting. You guys are still really small. We're still really small. Do you think your audience would be interested in that? So that really, as that Facebook group grew, so did our business as well, because we've kind of had a symbiotic relationship through the years with them. And we also discovered WordCamps. So WordPress is a website building platform that a lot of agencies use. WordCamps are basically industry events for that particular field. And we started going there too. And we started meeting people and we started forming relationships and we started cross promoting with different companies and making friends with people and just kind of telling them about our product in a way that wasn't annoying or anything. And then very, very slowly, the business built up. And I remember we were so excited when we made $100 in MRR. I mean, we were like fist bumping and crying almost and hugging. And, that first $100, we just kind of built from there.
As I said, that first MMR, you kept, yeah, that first, and
Yeah.
it's always about those barriers, isn't it? Whether that be your first 100, 1,000,
Yeah.
10,000 million, it's those barriers you just celebrate. And it's such a really great feeling. So
Mm.
before we leave the past, what didn't work in those days that you thought they would? I know that, you said ads weren't one of those. Your ads were the surprising part. You thought, oh, that should work, but it didn't. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
There were so many things that didn't work. So first from the technology perspective, you couldn't log in. So when you registered with your email and password, you can never log in again because it would tell you that your password's wrong no matter that it's correct. I also remember somebody contacting us in that first month saying, "Hey, I tried to pay, but I didn't finish paying, but it gave me the license for free." So we weren't even charging people. There were so many things with the technology, there were bugs and pretty critical things like, just giving stuff away for free. But from a marketing perspective, we really thought that Facebook ads were going to be a huge revenue source for us. So when we were first testing out the idea for this business, we wrote up a full business plan because we had investors that we were looking for. And we ran some Facebook ads and we saw like crazy interest in them. So we ran just a couple ads and we're like, okay, we're going to get registrations down to like $1 for per like agency application. This is going to go gangbusters. And then we start the business and we start running the ads. And for like the first week, it seems like it's going super well. And then all of a sudden, it's just not. Like Facebook ads are not working at all. And no matter how many times we change the message or the calls to action and all this stuff, it just seems like it works for the first couple days and then it just drops off to the point where, the cost of an agency application is just so beyond anything that we could ever make from that agency. So we thought that was going to be a huge revenue driver and it wasn't. And certain things that we didn't think were going to be a huge revenue driver were. So we didn't really think that Facebook groups of agencies were going to be that big of a deal. We didn't think that I could ever go to a WordCamp and speak. And I've been able to do that a lot of times. And that drives a lot of interest and a lot of registrations. We didn't think that we had the web app built initially for generating the policies. And we're like, okay, this is great. We're never going to do updates to this thing ever again. And we have to update it like all the time for new laws and new features and all this other stuff. So it's gone very differently from how we thought it was going to go, but we've been able to adapt at every step, which is really good.
Well, that's always a good thing because you're still here, and that's the thing. You're still
Yeah.
here, and you're still growing. And we all have to fall over so many times when we're building a business. And we've all heard this before. And even those who are watching and listening to this, people just think that who don't run a business assume we can get from A to Z, and it's just one straight line. But it's actually just whole bowl of spaghetti that we have to the turns we have to go through, and then get lost and come out the other end. But that's what makes it fun at the same time, doesn't it? So let's
Very
fast
true.
forward, Donata, to today. I know you're using partnerships and other stuff to grow, but what's currently driving most of your growth? Is it still partnerships or is there something new in the mix for you?
So it is mostly partnerships for us. But the thing that we've noticed lately is our support is growing a lot. So, we get support tickets from customers who say, I need help generating my policies, or I need help updating my card, or my client has this question, or my client has that question. Can you help me? And what we've seen is that in most, whenever people talk about us on YouTube or, we get referrals to other people, we get really nice messages about our support. And our kind of support mantra is get back to the client as soon as possible, within a day or so, or faster if we can, and solve their issue. I'm sure a lot of us had this experience where you have an issue with software and then you're sent like 2 weeks later, they send you some random article that has nothing what to do with what you're looking for. And then you write back asking for help and nobody's there. You can't call anyone. It's just a nightmare. So I think our support has been driving a lot of growth because we see agencies that refer other agencies to us. We see agencies that refer a lot of their clients to us because of our support, because they know when they email us, they're going to get a hold of us and we're going to help their clients along the way. So I think that's been a pretty big growth driver lately lightly.
Do you know, that's really interesting to hear because everyone seems to think it's the product or the service. It's that initial contact. It is the thing, the Big Mac of the offering that sustains growth. But what you're saying is actually more of the back end. We've got them on board now, and it's our reputation to support, our reputation for being there that's driving that growth. That's a really quite interesting factor. And I think anyone who's
Absolutely.
listening now, maybe looking back at what you're actually doing, is it the front line or is it the back line? Perhaps really look at you and think, oh, could that be a needle mover? Could that be a great revenue generator that you're maybe not focused on? So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
That's a really, really good point. So I know when we were chatting before, one thing that stood out in our chat was how seriously you take client education and support, this educational based marketing, as it's called today. How do you scale that while still trying to keep it personal on a one-to-one basis?
Yeah, absolutely. So in our industry, a lot of people don't know many things about privacy, or they don't know many things about privacy policies or terms of service. There's so much false information out there, like all privacy policies are the same, or you get a privacy policy, you put it on your site, and you never have to think about it again, or you can copy and paste your competitors' policies and you'll be fine. So we have to educate our clients on the right way to approach privacy and the right way to approach website policies, or else they're not going to see the value in our service, or they're not going to be compliant. They're going to be fined or sued. We also get tickets of people saying, well, I didn't expect this to do this. And we have to explain why it does that for compliance reasons. Like we're not making stuff up. So a huge part of what we do is education. And I think it's also a huge part of why clients stay with us, because they're able to understand, okay, this is what they provide. This is how it's different from what other similar companies provide. And this is how what they provide helps me. So we do a ton of this. We do YouTube videos. We do a lot of blogs. We do articles. We do interviews. We have our own privacy focused podcast. We do webinars and we just talk to clients, right? So instead of, let's say a client sends me an email and they say, I want a CPRA compliant privacy policy. Any other company would say, okay, great, here it is. My first question is, why do you think you need that? Because that doesn't apply to all businesses. You're a small business. That doesn't seem like it would apply to you. But here's all the other laws that would apply to you that would require you to have a privacy policy. So they know that it's tailored to them. It's not just like, oh, yeah, sure, just get whatever you want. We'll just do anything that you want. It's here's how to do things the right way. And we'd be happy to help you with that. So that's how we keep things personal. We tailor each response to each customer or each question. We also provide education on each topic. So if you're interested about what it means to sell personal data versus share it, or you're interested in, should I use the WordPress default privacy policy? And what does that mean for my business? You can find answers to all of those questions in our blog and in all the materials that we provide. And for agencies, we also provide a lot of sales materials so that they don't feel nervous about explaining this to their clients too. So we kind of tailor it by where the customer is and what their industry is and what they're looking for.
So that seems like an awful lot of work.
It is.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you balance the scalability of that then? Because obviously that I think it's tremendous, and people listening there go, yeah, that's what we'd love to do. But unless we have a huge team, you can't. How do you balance the personality growth there and the educational part, as well as trying to grow?
Sure. So I think the number one thing is you have to find somebody who thinks that writing or talking about this stuff is fun, right? So if I was to assign an article on the CPRA to a salesperson, they're going to be like, go kick rocks. I'm not doing that. I don't have time for that. But me, I could talk about that until I'm green in the face. And to me, writing an article about that doesn't necessarily feel like work. You know what I mean? So it doesn't necessarily feel like I'm just spending time doing stupid tasks that I don't want to do. And then also collating the questions that people have. So we have a lot of clients that have questions about particular items. So for example, why can't I just opt people into Google Analytics by default? Why do I have to obtain their consent? And if I see that there's a lot of people that have this question, okay, we're going to write an article about that, or we're going to do a video about that. If I see only one person every few years have a question, well, we're probably not going to do content around that because it's not that relevant to everyone. But we're going to make sure we answer the most prominent client questions first and have a repository. So we have a learning library too, where we collate the most common questions and then we write articles about them and people can search them. And that actually saves us a lot of time because instead of somebody going to our support portal and submitting a ticket, they're going to search first. And then they're going to see all the articles that we have about that topic. And then they're not going to submit a support request because they already learned the answer to their question. So that really helps. We also have, content calendars too. So we're not just like, every day you need 10 different blog posts on these topics because that's unsustainable. That's not going to happen. We have a lot of other stuff to do. But we do have a goal of, let's say we have 3 blog posts per month. And initially when we started, that number was much higher, but now it's getting a lot easier because we've already covered most topics. Or, we say we're going to talk on 3 podcasts this month, or we're going to attend 5 events this month. So it's not so much like, let's do everything we can every minute we can. We try to kind of parse it out so that it's more consistent and manageable too.
Well, do you know what? That just leads brilliantly into my next question, which is you've mentioned before founder-led authority marketing. So you're not just building Termageddon, you're representing the ABA, for example, speaking at events. How has visibility played a role in your company's growth?
Absolutely. So I think a lot of the work that I do at the ABA and other organizations, while I might not immediately gain clients, right? So let's say I went to Taiwan with the ABA recently to explain privacy rights and help them create privacy laws and enforce them, right? That doesn't directly lead to any clients, right? I go over there, we don't service the Taiwan market. I'm not going over there to meet like 20 new clients or anything like that. But I think it does lend that credibility to our product, especially since we're in the compliance industry. So there are some compliance companies where it's just a bunch of tech people who create a software with no legal knowledge, and then they claim that it's compliant, and then they sell it, and people just assume that it's true. But that's not actually the case. Like if I'm buying a compliance product for anything, I'm going to make sure that somebody who knows what they're doing is behind that product, right? The first thing I'm doing is going to the about page. Do you have a lawyer? Do you have a tax expert or a CPA? Just depending on what compliance I'm looking for. And if I'm not seeing that, I'm not really going to buy from them. So that overall work, even though it's also very personally satisfying and gratifying too, eventually leads to more business as well because you're established as an authority in the market. People know you know what you're talking about. They know you're using all that knowledge in the product. You're staying up to date with changes and trends. Even if they don't directly affect the businesses that we work with, it's still good to have somebody who knows this stuff behind the product. So that definitely leads to that additional value and that additional security that clients are looking for in compliance products, at least in my opinion.
No, absolutely. You can totally see that. It's just, you just want to push your face and your expertise and your knowledge in front of those that matter. And as you say, whether or not, you're not going to get clients out of it, but you are then being seen as authorities. Something that's, after our own hearts here is about making sure you're being seen as the authority is the important part. So let's look ahead now. So let's look ahead sort of 12 months, 24 months. What marketing channels or growth levers are on your radar, Donana, about now pushing yourself, growing to that next level? Where do you think the needle movers are in marketing terms?
Sure. So interesting that we talked about kind of mistakes and setbacks. So like 3 years ago, I think we started redeveloping our application with a completely new design, completely new interface based on client feedback that we've gotten throughout the years. And we're launching that right now. So that's going to be a huge change in how people set up their policies, making everything much faster and easier. The comprehensiveness of it is still going to be there. It's just going to be faster and easier to set everything up. So with that launch, our marketing over the next year is going to be focused on the new features that we're going to be releasing. We're also going to be releasing in new markets. So for example, like South Africa and New Zealand, we're going to be launching there. We've been covering GDPR for years, but we're going to make our service available in the EU as well, which I think is going to be huge. And then we have some different updates too. So for example, the disclaimer, most people don't know this, but every state in the US and every country out there has their own rules for what disclaimers for attorneys need to have. And I spent like weeks reading all those rules. It was horrible. And it took forever, but I was able to combine them in a way where we're going to be able to launch disclaimers specifically for law firms that take into account their state's ethical rules. Things like that. For people listening, that might not seem like a big deal, but it is a big deal for lawyers who practice. So, providing better options for nonprofits, that accept donations or sell things on their website, kind of getting into those different markets is what our plan is.
Yeah, I've no doubt that the growth is going to grow exponentially for you. It's breaking into those new markets. And what great markets to get into. Having spent a lot of time in South Africa and South African market, I always seem like a teenager. I see that country as a teenager. They're just ready to go. They're
Yeah.
just on the cusp, they're just ready to get, just like New Zealand. Again, I think it's going to be a great, great areas for you to go into. So if someone was listening today and you want them to walk away with just one insight from your journey, something that could probably change the trajectory of their business, what would it be?
Let's say be ready to change your approach. Like we talked about before, there's a lot of things that when we started didn't work that we really thought was going to work. And even if you have something that you think is proven, be ready for it to be unproven once you get out into the market, just like we did with Facebook ads. We thought for sure this is just going to go gangbusters, and it didn't. And we had to pivot into other things like education. So, just because you have a plan right now, that doesn't mean that plan is going to work. You should always have plan B, plan C, and plan D, and be ready to do other things that maybe initially you thought weren't going to be a big deal or you didn't think were going to work, and they do work. So just be ready for those surprises, I guess.
I think it's about being open-minded, isn't it? Not just so focused on. It's great to be focused, but you must also just have the parachute open a little bit to try and capture what else might change from you. I think it's a great piece of advice. A great way to end this interview. I can't believe time has got flown by so quickly that I was talking to you. So if people want to get hold of you, want to learn more about what you do or potentially work with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Sure. So you can find me on LinkedIn. My name's Donata Strength Skillroot. You can connect with me there. If you're interested about my company, you can go to Termageddon, Termageddon.
Well, I'll make sure those links are directly underneath inside the show notes on all the channels, so they can just do a one click and come straight through to you, Donna.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. And thank you for sharing your insights. It's been absolutely wonderful today.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's been an absolute pleasure. And it's our pleasure having you guys as well, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us for another episode of the Growth Focus podcast. But as usual, please, if you've learned anything from Donata today, please make sure that you like it and you share it at the bottom on the notes so that other people can see what you have seen or heard. But more importantly, please make sure you share. This episode, like all the other episodes, is there to help you grow your business and to help others. So we can all do that our bit by sharing knowledge and insights like we have today. So until the next episode, keep striving, keep working hard. More importantly, keep being profitable, and we'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.